The Charleston humidity is thick, but the chill in my living room is worse. My daughter's husband, Stephen, thinks I'm just a walking bank account waiting to be emptied. Tonight, he handed me a cup of tea, but his eyes were fixed on the document tucked under his arm, a forged diagnosis of advanced dementia. He thinks I'm a senile old woman who can't see the trap he's building. But he forgot one thing: I was a chemistry teacher for decades. I recognized the acrid odor in that cup the moment it touched the table. He's playing a dangerous game, and he's about to lose. Listen to the end to hear how I handled it, and subscribe to hear more of my journey. The paper is crisp, white, and a death sentence. I don't reach for it. I don't need to. The words at the top are printed in a font I recognize from 40 years of academic correspondence. Clean, authoritative Helvetica, and they read advanced terminal dementia with the casual cruelty of a parking citation. My name, Martha N. Reed, sits above the diagnosis like a crown before the guillotine. My glasses are on the end table, 3 feet to my left, and I don't need them for this. The letters are large enough. Stephen made sure of that. Time for your tea, Martha. His voice is a sound I have come to associate with the particular smoothness of a synthetic compound, engineered to seem natural, indistinguishable from the real thing unless you know what to look for. He slides the porcelain cup across the mahogany end table with the practiced grace of a man who has rehearsed the gesture, and the steam rises in a slow, mocking curl between us. I wrap my gnarled fingers around the saucer's edge, a reflex, and stop. There. Beneath the bergamot, beneath the milk, beneath the entire performance of an ordinary Thursday evening in Charleston. A metallic whisper. Faint as a confession. Sharp as a surgeon's blade. I look up. The mask is there, Stephen's face arranged into the expression I have catalogued over 6 years of careful observation, brows slightly furrowed, lips parted in the facsimile of concern, those blue eyes carrying the precise warmth of stage lighting. But for 1/2 second, 1/10 of a degree of temperature, the mask slips. The hunger underneath is not complicated. It is the hunger of a man counting money that is not yet his. He is looking at me the way my father used to look at a car he intended to trade in, calculating the depreciation, estimating the salvage value. He thinks I am the salvage. 6 years of this man at my dinner table, and it has come to this cup of tea. 40 years in a laboratory taught me that chemistry never lies, even when family does. I lean forward, slowly, with the deliberate fragility of a woman whose joints are on fire, which they are. The humidity off the battery tonight is the kind that settles into cartilage like an unwanted tenant, and I lower my nose toward the steam. To Stephen, this must read as a senile woman trying to remember what tea smells like. He shifts his weight, his navy suit jacket pulling across the shoulders, and waits. I am not smelling the tea. I am running an olfactory assay. The base note of Earl Grey is clean enough. The milk unremarkable. But underneath, threaded through the aromatic compounds like a fault line through limestone, there is a discord I have encountered only in one context, a graduate seminar on inorganic toxicology, 1987. A sharp, faintly garlic-adjacent edge that has no business in an evening beverage. It is subtle. It is very nearly nothing. It is arsenic trioxide. He's not being artistic about it. He never is. Stephen thinks in quarterly projections and leverage ratios, not molecular weights. The dosage is calibrated not to kill quickly but to accumulate, to produce precisely the cognitive fog he's been documenting in a forged report that he apparently typed on stolen hospital letterhead. The confusion. The deterioration. A chemistry professor slowly poisoned until she presents exactly like the diagnosis pinned to her chest. I straighten up, my neck creaking in protest. He is still waiting, those blue eyes doing their patient, reptilian watching. Parts per million, I think. He's been at this for months. I let my lower lip tremble. It requires no great acting. The pain in my knuckles alone provides a reliable baseline of distress to draw from. I let my hands, twisted by rheumatoid arthritis into shapes that no longer resemble anything a human hand should look like, fumble at the saucer. My right hand catches the rim at the wrong angle, and the cup stutters sideways. The tea sloshes. The porcelain clatters against the mahogany with a sound like a gunshot in the close, humid air of the parlor. Oh dear, I breathe. I let my voice go thin and papery, the way voices go when mine start to drift. Oh, I'm so clumsy. I pull my hand back. The tea spreads across the lace doily in a dark, spreading wing. I stare at it as though I don't understand what happened, my eyes doing what I have practiced in the bathroom mirror on 3 separate occasions since I first suspected him, going slightly unfocused, slightly lost. The expression of a woman whose interior lights are flickering. Stephen sighs. It is the most revealing sound he makes. Not the slick reassurances, not the warm baritone engineered to soothe Kimberly's anxieties, the sigh. Practice patience with a thin skin of contempt beneath it. He reaches past me to right the cup, and his hand smells of expensive sandalwood and something underneath that I've begun to think of as the smell of other people's money being spent. He sees a broken relic. Good. That is precisely what I need him to see. You're having another one of your forgotten mornings, Martha. He straightens up, smoothing his tie. You skipped your heart medication again. Kimberly and I are very worried about you. I keep my expression soft, bewildered, appropriately ashamed. Internally, I run a quick inventory. My metoprolol. Taken at 6 o'clock this morning, precisely, with 8 ounces of water and a quarter of a grapefruit, the same as every morning for 11 years. Logged in the small leather ledger I keep wedged between the box spring and the mattress frame in the corner where the housekeeper never vacuums. Stephen does not know about the ledger. Stephen does not know about a great many things I keep in that bedroom. He is probing. Testing the fence line for weakness, checking which sections have started to sag. He wants me to doubt myself. He wants a crack wide enough to slide a conservatorship petition through. I watch his eyes while he waits for my response. They are the eyes of a man who has already spent the money. The arrogance of it is, if I am honest with myself, almost impressive. Did I let my gaze drift toward the grandfather clock in the corner, my husband Gerald's clock, the one with the brass pendulum and the Westminster chime that Stephen has been trying to have appraised for 2 years. I blink at it as though reading a foreign language. Then I look back at Stephen, and I allow my eyes to fill. Not overflow. Just fill. I could have sworn I took them. The days just seem to. I pause, press my twisted fingers to my temple. They bleed together lately, don't they? The smile he gives me is a work of craft. And I watch his chest expand with the slow, luxurious intake of a man who believes he is winning. He reaches for his leather briefcase, Italian, monogrammed, a purchase that Kimberly's income paid for, and slides the forged medical report back inside with a satisfied click of the brass latch. The sound is the sound of a trap being set. He thinks the legal coffin is built and lined and ready. He just needs me to stop breathing long enough for him to close the lid. I look back at the grandfather clock and let my lower lip stay soft. 11 months, I think. He's been building this for at least 11 months. A low, loose rumble of thunder rolls in off the harbor, rattling the panes of the tall parlor windows, and the humidity spikes in the way it does before a Charleston storm, suddenly, cruelly, like a wet wool blanket thrown over your face. The moisture change hits my joints with the precision of a targeted strike. A bolt of fire travels through the knuckles of my right hand, up through the wrist, and into the elbow, and I allow myself to grip the arm of the wingback chair because there is no theater required for this. The pain is real. It is always real. I rub the inflamed knuckle of my index finger, feeling the heat trapped in the joint like a coal. This is the geography of my captivity. Not bars or locks, cartilage and bone. A mind that can still map a molecular structure from memory, housed in a body that requires 40 minutes and 2 rounds of medication to descend a staircase on bad days. Stephen understood this when he chose me. When he chose Kimberly, and by extension, me. He looked at the RA, at the age, at the empty chair across from mine at the dinner table, and he calculated a timeline. He looked at my hands and saw weakness. I look at his face and see the formula for his destruction. He masks the flicker of disgust behind his salesman smile, but I caught it. That quarter-second recoil before the performance reasserted itself. He has never been able to entirely hide what he thinks of bodies that don't perform optimally. It is, I have come to believe, one of his fundamental limitations. The heavy front door groans shut behind him, that particular low-timbered sound of old oak on old hinges that this house has been making since 1923, and the moment it catches in the frame, the befuddled widow evaporates. I do not stand quickly. My body does not permit quick. But I stand with intention, using the back of the sofa to guide my weight through the first 3 steps, the side table for the next 2, navigating my own parlor the way a sailor navigates shallow water, carefully, with full awareness of where the bottom lies. The Persian rug muffles my footsteps, which is fortunate. I return to the end table and the cooling tea. I do not drink it. I observe it. From the sewing caddy beside the chair I retrieve a pair of silver sugar tongs, sterling, a wedding gift, one of the few objects in this house Stephen has not yet inventoried, and I use them to scrape along the bottom interior curve of the porcelain cup. The residue is there. A thin, gritty layer of partially dissolved white powder that settled rather than suspended. Crude. The mark of a man who read about arsenic trioxide online and did not read carefully enough. Arsenic trioxide is poorly soluble in cold water. He has been warming my tea to compensate, but his timing is imprecise, and some fraction of each dose settles before I can consume it. He is arrogant. He is not precise. That distinction will matter enormously in about 72 hours. The sunroom is mine. It has always been mine. Gerald understood this, and Stephen, despite his many failings, has had the animal instinct to leave it alone. Floor-to-ceiling windows face east, toward the garden, and the afternoon light in this room is the particular quality of diffused gold that makes the green of the ficus bright and clean. My workbench is along the north wall, the appearance of an elderly woman's hobby space, complete with 2 half-finished afghans, a basket of novelty yarn in unfortunate colors, and several half-assembled birdhouse kits that have been in progress for 4 years. The craft kit is a large wicker basket. It is also a portable analytical laboratory, if you know what you're looking for. I lift the false bottom, a simple piece of balsa fitted to the basket's interior dimensions, covered in the same cotton lining, and retrieve what I need, a small glass vial, hand-labeled in my own cramped script, cobalt blue pigment. I transfer the tea residue from the tongs into the vial using a glass microspatula no thicker than a knitting needle. My hands shake, not from fear but from the chronic inflammation, and I take a breath and wait for the tremor to subside before I seal the vial. My heart is hammering. Not from fear, I identify the sensation carefully, as I would identify any compound I hadn't expected to encounter. Not fear. Something older. Something that preceded 40 years of professional composure. The particular, cellular outrage of a person being systematically erased by someone she was supposed to be able to trust. I seal the vial. I tuck it into the hidden compartment in the basket's lining, behind the false bottom, beneath the unhappy yarn. This is the first reagent. The reaction has begun. The back door chimes, 3 ascending notes, the same tone Gerald programmed in 1994 and that I have never changed because I find consistency in small things to be a form of ballast, and Kimberly's heels announce her on the hardwood before she reaches the hall. She walks quickly when she's anxious, which means she nearly always walks quickly. The sound is a staccato percussion of worry, uneven, like a sentence trailing off. I do not call out to her. Because Stephen is already there. He moves fast for a large man, and silently on those Italian leather soles, I catch the sound of his footsteps repositioning in the hallway before she's even through the vestibule. He intercepts her the way a border agent intercepts a traveler, not with force, with paperwork, with authority, with the assumption that he has the right to filter what gets through. She's had a very difficult afternoon, Kim. His voice carries through the walls with the particular clarity of old plaster and my own stillness. The confusion is getting worse. She knocked her tea over. She didn't recognize the clock. I stand at the sunroom door and listen. Kimberly's sharp intake of breath is the sound of a woman having her worst fear confirmed. The sound travels through me like a current through a poor conductor. I feel it, but I cannot afford to let it move me. He is poisoning her mind. The same systematic patience, the same accumulation of false evidence, the same calibrated dosage. Just a different delivery mechanism. I ease the dining room door open an inch. No more. An inch provides sufficient sight line to the hallway and the near end of the dining table, and a crack of an inch in an old house reads as the natural settling of a door frame. Stephen and Kimberly are at the table now. He has his arm around her, the particular arm around the shoulder that I have observed is his primary instrument of information control. It turns her body toward him, orients her face away from independent sight lines, and creates the tactile sensation of being protected by the very source of the threat. He opens the briefcase. He produces the report. He lays it in front of her the way you lay a bill in front of a restaurant customer, matter of fact, inevitable, the end of the discussion disguised as the beginning of it. I watch Kimberly's face as she reads. Her features go through several stages in quick succession: confusion, comprehension, resistance, and then the particular collapse of a woman who believes she is looking at objective medical truth. Her honey blonde hair falls forward as her chin drops, the anxious waves hiding the tears I can see welling in her eyes from here. Her shoulders curve inward, the posture of a person sustaining a blow. She trusts him. She loves him. And in this moment, with that paper between them and his hand on her shoulder, she is the most dangerous person in the house. Not because she means me harm. Precisely because she doesn't. Her grief is real. Her desire to do right by me is real. And both of those real things are weapons Stephen has turned in my direction without her knowledge or consent. I ease the door shut. I stand in the thin corridor between the dining room and the sunroom for a long moment, my hand flat against the cool plaster of the wall, and I perform the internal accounting that I have been avoiding. I cannot go to Kimberly now. Not tonight, not with that paper fresh in her mind and his hand still warm on her shoulder. The moment I say he's poisoning me, she will look at the diagnosis: advanced terminal dementia, bold and clinical and carrying the false authority of a hospital letterhead, and she will hear it as a paranoid delusion. She will hear it because she has been prepared to hear it. He has been building the frame for months, and I have been walking the perimeter of it without fully understanding its dimensions. Every confused morning he reported. Every forgotten medication. Every fumbled teacup. He has been constructing a dossier, and my body, my genuinely arthritic, genuinely painful, genuinely aging body, has been providing him with raw material. She is already a casualty. I cannot rescue her until I rescue myself first. The grief of this settles in my sternum with a weight I have not felt since Gerald's last morning. I let it sit there for a count of 10, which is the limit I allow. Then I perform what my graduate students used to call the read reset, a slow breath in, held for 4 counts, released for 4, and I return to the sunroom. I am 70 years old. My hands look like illustrations from a medical textbook. I am outnumbered and outweighed and operating in a body that stages a revolt every time the barometric pressure changes. I am entirely alone in this fight. Good. Alone means no variables I can't account for. It's time to stop being a mother and start being a scientist. I sink into the wingback chair and let the evening come. The parlor fills with the blue-gray light of an overcast Charleston dusk, the kind that turns the Persian rug's reds into something bruised and deep, and I close my eyes. The pain in my joints runs its familiar circuit, knuckles to wrists, wrists to elbows, a low-grade fire that has been my constant companion for 11 years. I breathe through it. I let it sharpen me rather than soften me. Behind my eyelids, I visualize the molecular structure of arsenic trioxide. As2O3. A white, vitreous solid with a solubility problem he didn't research thoroughly enough. I run the periodic table the way some people run a rosary. It has always been a comfort, the absolute, non-negotiable truthfulness of the elements. Then I begin to map the house. The sunroom and its hidden compartments. The dining room with the UV lamp Gerald installed over the sideboard for his photography hobby, still mounted, still functional. The bedroom with the ledger. The craft kit and its reagents. I think about Stephen's hand cream. He uses the same jar every morning. It sits on the bathroom counter in the guest suite. I have observed this on 3 occasions when passing the open door. A premium brand in a matte black container. He is vain about his hands in the way men are who shake a great many hands professionally. He applies it after every washing. I think about what I could introduce into that cream that would be invisible to the naked eye and entirely legible to a UV lamp of a specific frequency. I think about arsenic salts and fluorescent indicators and the particular chemistry of skin absorption. And then I think about the moment he will stand in this room and not understand why his palms are glowing. Control the reaction, I whisper. The grandfather clock marks the half hour with a single, resonant tone. The heat hasn't broken. But I have a formula, and that has always been enough. She kneels in front of me the way people kneel before something they've already decided to bury. Kimberly's honey blonde waves are coming undone. She's been running her hands through them again, the nervous habit she's had since she was 9 years old and couldn't tell me something she knew I wouldn't want to hear. Her eyes are swimming. Not with malice. Never with malice. That's the particular cruelty of this moment. The instrument of my captivity is assembled entirely from love. Mom. Her voice breaks on the single syllable. Stephen thinks, we both think, it's safer if I hold on to your car keys for a while. She reaches for my purse, and I let her. I sit with my hands in my lap, my arthritic fingers already loosening their grip before she even reaches the keychain, because I understand what she cannot, that fighting this openly would be the end of me. Her fingers close around the silver keychain, Gerald's initials stamped into the fob, worn smooth from 30 years in my pocket, and she pries it from my hand with the delicate, guilty care of someone removing a splinter. The cold bite of the metal leaving my palm is not a small thing. It lands in my chest like a stone dropping into still water, the ripple spreading outward. The car is my legs. The car is the pharmacy, the university, the police station. The car is the 3-mile radius that constitutes the difference between contained and imprisoned. Stephen has just drawn the perimeter of my cage, and he used my daughter's trembling hands to do it. I see him in the hallway. He is standing in the shadow beyond the parlor threshold, precisely far enough back that Kimberly cannot see his expression from where she kneels. I can see it. The blue eyes are flat with satisfaction. He is watching me absorb the loss of my mobility with the patient, technical interest of a man observing a variable being successfully eliminated from the equation. I want to take my daughter by the shoulders and say, Kimberly Ann, I have a vial in my craft kit with the proof of what he's putting in my tea. I have a ledger under the mattress. I am more lucid than you have ever been, because lucidity is all I have left, and I have been protecting it like a pilot light in a hurricane. But Stephen shifts his weight in the hallway, and I see the slight adjustment of his posture, leaning forward a 1/4 inch, ready to intercept. Any sign of clarity and he will call it a lucid interval. Any sign of anger and he will call it agitation. He has built a diagnostic trap in which every authentic response I have becomes evidence against me. I keep my hands still in my lap. It's the sundowning, Kim. He steps into the parlor light with the measured confidence of a man who has walked onto stages before. His voice carries the particular register of a physician delivering a difficult truth, slow, responsible, burdened by the weight of knowing more than everyone in the room. He checks his watch. The gold face catches the lamplight. When the light hits a certain angle, the paranoia peaks. She thinks everyone is out to get her. He speaks about me in the third person while I sit 3 feet from him. I have attended faculty meetings for 35 years. I have sat through budget committee hearings and tenure reviews and the particularly soul-deadening experience of explaining academic misconduct to a dean who did not want to hear it. I have learned, in those rooms, that the most effective form of erasure is not shouting. It is the calm, procedural act of referring to a person as though they are an exhibit rather than a witness. The medical literature is pretty clear, Stephen continues, settling into the adjacent chair with the ease of a man in his own home. Kimberly is still looking at me with that devastating pity, and he turns toward her just enough to draw her gaze with his. In middle stage presentation, there are good hours and bad hours. The trick is not to engage the delusion. Just redirect. Kimberly nods. She is trying to be strong for me. Then Stephen looks at me. And he winks. A single, small, precise wink, angled below Kimberly's sightline. His expression does not change around it, the mask of stoic endurance holds perfectly in place for her, but for me there is that fraction of a second of undisguised triumph. A silent checkmate delivered with the casualness of a man certain he has already won. I hold his gaze and let my own go soft, unfocused. You have made a mistake, I think. You have shown me exactly what you are. I let my shoulders cave. It is perhaps the finest performance of my life, and I have performed a great many, 35 years of academic theater, of presenting research to hostile committees, of maintaining composure while a younger male colleague restated my conclusions as his own. I have worn many masks. This one, the defeated crone, the woman whose resistance has finally been worn down to dust, is the most useful one I have ever put on. If you think it's best, dear, I murmur. I manufacture a vacant, watery smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes, the kind that says I'm not entirely sure where I am or who you are, but I'm agreeable about it. I hand over the spare key I've kept in my pocket. Kimberly's face washes with a relief so pure it almost breaks my composure. I let her have it. I let her believe the resistance is finished. Inside, my mind is turning at full speed. I am trapped, physically immobile, digitally isolated if Stephen has his way, legally at risk of erasure by tomorrow morning. My body cannot fight him. My voice will be reframed as delusion. The only weapon I have remaining is the fact that he wants my $4.5 million badly enough to get sloppy, and men who want things that badly always get sloppy. I need him comfortable. I need him to believe the chessboard has been cleared and the game is over. I need to make him feel so entirely safe that he stops watching his hands. He produces a clipboard. I hear the paper before I see it, a dry, bureaucratic rustle in the humid air of the parlor, the sound of official documents, of things being made permanent. Stephen sets the clipboard on the end table beside me with the careful respect a surgeon shows a surgical tray, and he flips to the signature page with the thumbnail of someone who has practiced the gesture. The form is several pages. I catch enough of the language in the header to confirm what I already knew. This is a petition for full conservatorship. Not the limited kind that manages a single account or decision category. Full. It means Stephen would control my house, my medical directives, my financial accounts, and my physical placement. It means that tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, a judge would be asked to legally certify that Martha and Reed no longer exists as a competent adult. $4.5 million. The portfolio Gerald and I built over 40 years of saving and investing and saying no to things we wanted so that we could say yes to things that mattered. Stephen holds out a pen. His grip lingers on mine as he transfers the weight of the plastic into my hand, pressing it deliberately against my swollen knuckles. The inflammation flares. He knows exactly where to press. I stare at the signature line. I stare at it for a long, swelling moment in which he believes I am confused, and in which I am memorizing the precise wording of the clause that would end my legal existence. Then I let the pen slip from my fingers. I'm so tired, I breathe. He picks up the pen without a word. He sets it on the clipboard. He will bring it back. The tea, Kimberly. I reach for my daughter's wrist, my fingers closing around the sleeve of her cardigan. It tasted like pennies. She stops. For one moment, one unguarded, authentic moment, she looks at me with something other than pity. Something that might be hearing. And then Stephen's hand covers mine. He pats it. The rhythm is slow, practiced, calibrated to land just on the side of soothing rather than patronizing, though both of us who are not his daughter can feel the difference. He looks at Kimberly with the expression of a man managing a difficult situation with great personal cost to himself. Sensory hallucinations, honey. It's common in the middle stages. His voice is gentle, which is the most obscene thing about it. The brain starts misinterpreting common flavors. Yesterday she told us she smelled sulfur in the hallway. It's the synapses, they start misfiring, and the brain can't distinguish real input from fabricated input. Kimberly's chin drops. Her hand moves toward mine, and she holds my fingers in both of hers, the deformed, inflamed, gnarled fingers that she used to hold differently, when she was small and I was the largest thing in her world. She is nodding. She believes him. I can feel the exact moment it happens, the belief settling into her like a key turning in a lock, and I understand that the truth I am carrying is currently inaccessible to her. Not because she doesn't love me. Because she loves me so much that the story he's given her, your mother is slipping away, and you must be brave and kind and let her go gracefully, is the one she needs to be true. It is kinder than the alternative. I turn my hand over in hers and squeeze her fingers once, gently. Not yet, I tell myself. Not yet. I try to stand. The pain arrives before the movement does, a white-hot cascade through both knees, the particular variety of rheumatoid inflammation that feels less like pain than like the structural failure of a load-bearing wall. My legs buckle before they've fully extended, and I drop back into the upholstery with a gasp that I do not perform and cannot suppress. I sit there for a moment, breathing. Stephen is standing now, his full height in the lamplight, 6'1" of gym-toned, bespoke-suited certainty, and the physical geometry of the room is suddenly, viscerally obvious. I am in a chair. He is standing. I cannot get out of the chair without assistance or without a slower, more determined effort than I can currently manage. He is between me and the hallway, between me and the sunroom, between me and every exit. He looks down at my hands. I see it, that involuntary micro-expression he cannot entirely train out of himself, a fractional recoil, the way a person looks at something biological that has stopped functioning as intended. He disguises it in under a second. But I am a woman who has spent 40 years reading the expressions of students who believed they were hiding their understanding from her, and I miss very little. He is revolted by my body. Good. Revolted men get impatient. Impatient men make errors. The red LED catches my eye first. It is placed with what I reluctantly acknowledge is some intelligence, behind the second row of chemistry journals on the bookshelf, between a copy of March's Advanced Organic Chemistry and the collected proceedings of the 1991 American Chemical Society Conference. The blinking is slow and regular. A nanny cam, one of the wireless varieties, small enough to fit in the palm of a hand. For your safety, Martha, Stephen says, following my gaze with the unruffled calm of a man who has already won the argument. In case you have a fall when we're not in the room. The framing is impeccable. He offers it as care. It functions as surveillance. Every movement I make in this room is now recorded. Every reach toward the craft kit. Every gesture toward the sunroom door. Every moment of clarity I allow myself. He will have footage of me at my most apparently lucid to present to a judge as good days, interspersed with the manufactured evidence of decline, and footage of any agitation or independent action to present as deterioration or erratic behavior. He has turned my sanctuary into an exhibit. I look at the camera for one long moment. Then I look away, letting my expression go confused and incurious, the way a woman looks at an object she doesn't recognize and can't place. I am already mapping the blind spots. The camera's angle covers the chair and the central rug and most of the bookshelf wall. It does not cover the far corner of the sunroom, behind the ficus. It does not cover the space directly below the camera itself, a standard limitation of fixed-lens nanny cams at that mounting height. And it cannot see through the false bottom of the craft kit from that angle. He is watching me. But I know what he cannot see. I bought you something for those hands. He sets the jar on the side table with a small, satisfied placement, the way you set down a finished argument. It is sleek, matte labeled, the kind of packaging that signals serious money spent on something that presents itself as natural. Organic. High-potency lavender. He unscrews the lid. The scent blooms into the room, and I breathe it before I can stop myself. Thick, floral, aggressively botanical. Lavender at a concentration no artisan formulator would recommend, heavy enough to do exactly what it is designed to do, drown out whatever is underneath it. But I am a woman who spent 40 years teaching undergraduate students to smell past the obvious compound, to push past the note on top and find the base. The lavender is real. The lavender is also a curtain. And behind it, faint but present and entirely identifiable to a mind trained on toxicology and organic chemistry, is the sharp, bitter almond register of a secondary compound. He is changing the delivery vector. Inorganic arsenic in the tea is slow and depends on my cooperation with the beverage. Transdermal absorption through hand cream is slower still as a mechanism, but it requires no cooperation from the target. He simply needs to establish a habit, watch me apply it, encourage Kimberly to encourage me to apply it, and the accumulation continues while I sleep. He is accelerating. The hearing is tomorrow morning. He needs me visibly impaired, not dead. Dead opens investigations. Progressive documented decline opens a conservatorship. I look at the jar. How thoughtful, I say softly. I do not touch it. The house settles into the particular quiet of a Charleston evening, the ceiling fans turning, the distant percussion of rain on the battery wall, the ghost creak of the old oak joists. I sit in my wingback chair with my hands folded in my lap, listening. From the kitchen, 30 feet and 2 walls away, the sound of Kimberly's voice comes in fragments. Finally slipping away, Sarah. A pause. The other end of a phone call I cannot hear. Stephen has been a saint, but she's not there anymore. Her voice breaks on it. The grief is real and raw and entirely misplaced, and it lands in me like a formal notification. You are being mourned. It's like her mind is just evaporating. I sit in my chair, fully present, fully conscious, running a mental inventory of reagent quantities and camera blind spots and the specific fluorescent properties of the compound I intend to introduce into Stephen's hand cream. I sit there, alive in every sense that matters, listening to my daughter grieve a death that has not happened. And I feel the particular, searing sting of it, that the most effective lie Stephen has told is the one Kimberly is now repeating in her own voice, in her own grief, to the people she trusts. He didn't have to take my phone. He didn't have to forge a medical report. The greatest piece of evidence he manufactured is my daughter's tears. I look at the ceiling fan turning and I breathe. Hold. Time for your afternoon calm, Martha. He holds the pill out in his open palm. Sky blue, small, oval, I recognize the form factor if not the exact imprint. A benzodiazepine, almost certainly. Something in the diazepam or lorazepam family, a dosage calibrated to produce a compliant, mildly stuporous woman rather than a fully sedated one. He needs me present enough for the conservatorship hearing tomorrow, slurring, perhaps, slow, visibly requiring management, but not unconscious, which would raise questions. He watches my throat. I place the pill on my tongue. I take the water glass from his hand and I swallow with a deliberate, audible gulp, the kind that communicates yes, I've done this, we're finished here. His eyes stay on my throat the way a trainer's eyes stay on a horse's mouth after administering a supplement. He is checking for the swallow. He sees what he needs to see. He turns toward the window to adjust the blinds. I press my tongue to the pill, find it still intact against my lower gum, and extract it carefully with the tip of my tongue into the hollow between my cheek and the back molar. Then I press 2 twisted fingers to my lips, an elderly woman rubbing her mouth, nothing more, and as Stephen's back is still angled toward the window, I wedge the pill deep into the velvet crevice of the wingback chair's inner armrest seam. He turns back and looks at me. I look back at him with soft, cooperative eyes. He nods once, satisfied, and leaves the room. I exhale through my nose and return to my calculations. Have you seen my phone, Stephen? I wanted to call Professor Eris. I keep my voice light, curious, slightly distracted, the voice of a woman who misplaces things and is mildly troubled by it. Dr. Elias Eris is my former postdoctoral student, now a full professor at the Medical University of South Carolina, with access to a toxicology lab and, more relevantly, to legal counsel who handles elder cases. He is also the only person in my professional network who knows that I periodically conduct home experiments and would not, if he received a correctly worded message, dismiss it as delusion. Stephen does not look up from his laptop. I think you misplaced it again, Martha. Or maybe the battery died. He types something. Don't worry about it. You don't need to be bothered with work anymore. You're retired. The delivery is entirely casual. Bored, almost. He's not even performing concern for this one, there's no audience in the room. This is the unmasked version, a man removing a variable with the same interest he'd bring to clearing browser history. No phone. No professional contacts. No independent communication. I am an island. I turn my face toward the window and look at the rain hitting the garden, and I allow myself, for exactly 10 seconds, to feel the full weight of my isolation. No Gerald. No colleagues. No car keys. No phone. Kimberly believing the lie. A camera in the corner. A conservatorship hearing at 10 in the morning. 10 seconds. Then I look at the craft kit across the room. The grandfather clock strikes 9. 13 hours. I sit in the blue dark of the parlor, the house quiet around me, Stephen's laptop closed and gone, Kimberly's footsteps retreated upstairs an hour ago, the nanny cam blinking its slow red pulse from behind the chemistry journals. My joints have settled into the low, grinding ache that is their version of rest. The rheumatoid arthritis does not disappear, it adjusts, the way all chronic things adjust, finding the level it can sustain indefinitely. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, a judge will be presented with a forged medical report, documented evidence of erratic behavior, and a petition signed by a man who has been systematically poisoning me for months. Unless I look at the craft kit. I look at the camera. I look at the angle between them, calculating the blind spot I've already mapped, the far corner of the sunroom, below the camera's fixed lens range. One chance. Not to argue, not to perform lucidity in front of a judge who has already been positioned to interpret my clarity as a good day. One chance to show Kimberly something she cannot be coached to interpret away. Something visible. Something that belongs to the vocabulary of laboratory truth rather than the vocabulary of Stephen's manufactured reality. Chemistry never lies. I have to break her heart to save her life. I have to hand her the evidence and watch it destroy everything she believed about the man she chose, and I have to do it with enough precision and enough speed that Stephen cannot intercept the moment before it lands. I have 13 hours. I close my eyes, and I go back to the formula. Control the reaction. The rain intensifies against the old windows of the Reed estate, and Martha sits in the dark of her own home, assembling the only weapon she has ever truly known how to wield, a precise and irrefutable truth. The sound of Stephen's SUV fades down the driveway in stages, the crunch of gravel, the low growl of the engine dropping in pitch as it reaches the street, then the wet hiss of tires on rain-slicked asphalt, and then nothing. The house exhales around me. The ceiling fans turn. The grandfather clock marks the silence with its steady, indifferent pulse. Kimberly is at the dining table with her head in her hands. She is 5 feet from me, and she is grieving me. The honey blonde waves have come entirely loose now, falling forward over her face, and her shoulders are doing the small, controlled shuddering of a woman trying not to fully break. She thinks I cannot see her. She thinks I am sitting in my chair in a pleasant fog, perhaps watching the rain streak down the parlor windows, perhaps not watching anything at all. She is wrong about so many things, my daughter. My hands are already moving. The arthritis does not stop for strategy. The pain is its own constant weather system, and this morning the humidity has pushed it into the red, a rhythmic, pulsing fire through every joint from the knuckle outward, up through the wrists, the specific agony that no amount of professional composure entirely masks. But I have been managing pain for 11 years. I know the difference between pain that signals damage and pain that signals existing, and this is existing pain. I can work with existing. I force my fingers, curved and rigid as the roots of a very old tree, toward the wicker basket on the side table. The motion is slow. Every millimeter costs something. But Stephen is gone, the camera blinks its useless red eye from behind the chemistry journals, and Kimberly's face is still hidden in her hands. I don't have time for a lecture. I have just enough time for a demonstration. Kimberly. I let the voice come out clean. No tremor, no manufactured fragility, no quavering read of a confused old woman. I use the voice I used for 35 years to silence a lecture hall of 200 undergraduates who thought they already knew the answer. The voice of the department head. The voice of someone who has not, in fact, been losing her mind. She flinches. It is a genuine, full-body flinch, the kind that happens when a sound lands in a register you weren't expecting from a source you'd already categorized. She lifts her head from her hands, and her eyes find mine, and for one unguarded second I see something flicker in them that isn't pity. It is the ghost of recognition. The memory of a different version of this room, a different version of me, a version she'd accepted as gone. Mom? Her voice is barely audible. I need you to listen to me with the part of your brain that belongs to you, I say, and not to him. Can you do that? She stares at me. I do not beg her to believe I'm sane. Sanity is subjective. Stephen has spent 6 months establishing the subjective context, and I cannot argue my way out of a frame he built with a forged medical report and my daughter's love for me. What I can do is what I have always done. I can show her the data. Come to the coffee table, I say. There is a bottle in my craft kit labeled Violet 4. Bring it here. She hesitates. I watch the internal conflict move across her face with the clarity of a weather system, the trained compliance, the 6 months of Stephen's voice in her ear, the devastating pity that has reorganized her understanding of me into something that requires management rather than listening. All of it on one side. And on the other side, the ghost of the mother she knew. The woman who sat with her at a kitchen table in 1994 and explained, with a piece of paper and a pencil, why certain household chemicals must never be combined. The woman who taught her that the world was not arbitrary, that things had reasons, that reasons could be found, that looking was always better than assuming. She gets up. She crosses to the craft kit. She retrieves the dropper bottle, small, glass, labeled in my cramped script, and brings it to the coffee table, setting it down with the careful, uncertain hands of someone who isn't sure whether she's participating in a lucid moment or a delusion. I look at her across the table. Science is about repeatability, Kim, I say, my voice low. My knuckles are white against the armrest, I'm gripping it to keep my hands from trembling visibly. Stephen says I'm hallucinating the metallic taste in my tea. He says my mind is failing. I say the tea is contaminated. One of us is wrong. I hold her gaze. The math will tell us which. I pull the hidden vial from the deep cuff of my cardigan sleeve, the glass tube I've been carrying against my wrist for the past 18 hours, the tea residue I scraped from the bottom of the porcelain cup with Gerald's silver sugar tongs, the first reagent, the beginning of the reaction. I set it on the coffee table between us. It sits there in the lamplight, small and amber and entirely ordinary looking. Kimberly looks at it. Then at me. Then at it again. Drop 3 beads of the indicator into the vial, I tell her. No more, no less. Her hands are shaking. Not slightly. The dropper bottle rattles against the glass rim of the vial as she positions it, and I watch her take a breath and try to steady herself, the way she used to try to steady herself before a piano recital, a particular, controlled inhale that she's had since childhood and has never lost. She is terrified of what might happen. I can see it in the set of her jaw, the deliberate way she keeps her eyes on the task rather than on my face. She is more terrified that I might be right than that I might be wrong. I understand this. Being wrong means I am sick and she has been doing the merciful thing. Being right means something she cannot yet name, something so vast and dark that her mind has been refusing its shape for weeks. She squeezes the rubber bulb. 1 drop. The clear liquid falls into the amber tea residue and disappears. Nothing yet. Kimberly's breath holds. 2. The amber in the vial shifts, barely, a suggestion of motion at the molecular level, the reaction beginning its assembly. 3. The grandfather clock ticks. The rain presses against the old windows. The ceiling fan turns. The heat in the room is a physical presence, the Charleston summer insisting on itself through every sealed pane of glass. And then the vial goes black. It is not a fade. It is not a gradual darkening or a subtle shift in hue. It is a punch, an instantaneous, violent, absolute transformation from amber to a bruised, necrotic black, the color of rot, the color of something that has been deprived of light for a long time and has become something else entirely. The starch iodide indicator has found what it was looking for. Kimberly makes a sound I have never heard from her before. Not a word. Not quite a sob. The involuntary, raw vocalization of a person whose body receives information before their mind can build language around it. Arsenic, Kimberly, I say. My voice is flat and clinical, which is the only way I know how to say it without coming apart. It's not dementia. It's a slow-motion execution. She recoils. Her hand flies to her mouth, and the vial stays on the table between us, that small glass tube filled with the color of undeniable truth, and I watch her look at it the way she looked at the medical report Stephen showed her. Except this time the look on her face is different. This time there is no relief, no sad acceptance, no quiet reorganization of grief into a manageable shape. This time there is horror. Pure, physical, unmediated horror. She looks at the vial. She looks at the medical report on the sideboard, Stephen's forged document, still sitting where he left it like a piece of furniture. She looks back at the vial. She swallows. Her voice is barely formed. He's killing you. The words break open as she says them. The sob hits her in the sternum and she doubles slightly forward, her hands still over her mouth, and I see her absorbing it, the full architecture of it, every kind word Stephen spoke about my decline, every medication he handed me, every reassurance he offered while he filed the paperwork, all of it inverting at once, all of it becoming its opposite in a single chemical second. I reach across the table and put my hand over hers. My gnarled, frozen, arthritic hand, which Stephen looks at with revulsion and which my daughter has always held with gentleness. I know, I say. I've known for a while. The front door slams. We both go rigid, 2 women over a black vial, 2 bodies responding to a sound like a gunshot in the thick afternoon air. Kimberly's head jerks toward the hallway. My hand closes around her wrist. And Stephen walks in. He's flushed from the heat, the tips of his ears red, a faint sheen across the broad plane of his forehead, and he's moving with the particular energy of a man who has just had something go very right for him. The salesman's smile is already assembling itself in the lower half of his face, the practiced warmth of a man who is very nearly done with a long project and can allow himself a small celebration. It dies. It dies in less than a second, which is how long it takes his eyes to find Kimberly's face and read what's written there, the horror, the loathing, the absolute, chemical clarity of a woman who has stopped believing the story. His gaze drops to her hands. To the vial. To the black liquid inside it. The silence in the room becomes a different kind of silence. The mask doesn't slip. It's discarded. There's a distinction. Slipping implies accident, implies a moment of weakness. What happens to Stephen's face in the next 2 seconds is deliberate, the mask of the doting son-in-law coming off the way a tool gets set down when you no longer need it. What remains underneath is something I have glimpsed only in the wink he gave me over Kimberly's shoulder, but what I am seeing now is the full, unobstructed version. His eyes go flat and dark. The blue, which has always been deceptive, becomes simply opaque. You just couldn't let it go, could you, Martha? It is not a question. His voice has dropped to a register I haven't heard from him before, a low, dangerous growl that dispenses entirely with the warm baritone he performs for audiences. He moves across the parlor with a speed that belies his size, and I think, there is the athlete underneath the bespoke suit, and then I think, this is what he's been keeping in reserve. He wrenches the vial from Kimberly's hand. She screams. The sound is brief and high and immediately swallowed by the humid air of the room, and before she can do anything else he's shoved her aside with a brutal efficiency that sends her stumbling against the sideboard, the forged medical report skittering to the floor, and then his hands are on me. His fingers dig into my shoulders, into the inflamed joints of my shoulder sockets, and the pain is extraordinary. It whites out my vision for a full second. He pins me against the back of the wingback chair. He is very large, and I am very small, and the physics of this situation are not in my favor. He reaches into the pocket of his suit jacket and produces the bottle of high-strength painkillers, my prescription, the oxycodone I'm allowed twice daily for the RA, the dosage I manage with precision because an overdose at my age with my weight and my cardiovascular history is a clinical event with predictable outcomes. He knows exactly what he's holding. If you want to be a patient, he says, let's make it official. He forces the pills into my mouth. His hand is a heavy, suffocating weight over my face, covering my nose and mouth both, and I understand that he will hold it there until my body's reflexes take over. The choice is swallow or suffocate. I swallow. He watches my throat. He nods. His hand drops. The pills slide down and I sit very still and I let the calculus run. He thinks he has sedated me into a coma. He is not wrong about the pharmacology, exactly. The dosage he's forced on me, stacked on my existing tolerance level, will produce significant CNS depression within 15 to 20 minutes. What he doesn't know, because he has been reading about arsenic and not about opioid pharmacology, is that a woman with 11 years of managed chronic pain who takes oxycodone twice daily has a different physiological response curve than an opioid-naive patient. My tolerance is substantial. The dose will not put me under, it will put me into a floating, cushioned state. It will, more relevantly, do something that nothing else in this situation can do. It will silence the rheumatoid arthritis. The inflammation in my knees, my hands, my hips, the constant grinding fire that has been my cage as surely as any lock, will dampen into a dull, distant thrum. I will have a window, 20 to 40 minutes at the pharmacological peak, in which my joints can move with something approaching functional range. I need that window. I don't fight the haze. I lean into it. I let my head fall to the side, my eyes rolling back with a convincing looseness, the specific limpness of a body losing its organizing principle. I let my hands fall open in my lap, fingers uncurling from their frozen hooks. I play the part of the overdosed victim. And I take inventory of what I can still do. She's had a reaction. I'm taking her to the ER. His voice is loud, deliberately, performance loudly. Loud enough to carry through the parlor walls to the neighbors on either side, loud enough to establish a narrative that will be heard and potentially repeated. I heard him say he was taking her to the emergency room. He sounded very concerned. He is building his alibi in real time, and he is doing it with the reflex of a man who has thought about this contingency. He scoops me out of the wingback chair. I am a dead weight in his arms, entirely cooperative, breathing slow and shallow against his shoulder. He smells of expensive sandalwood, and underneath it now, something else, a sharp, biological note of adrenaline and sweat, the smell of a man who has run out of moves and is executing the final one. The bespoke suit jacket is damp at the back. His arms are shaking slightly with the effort of carrying me, or possibly with something else. Kimberly is on the floor near the sideboard. I cannot see her face from this angle, only the shape of her, crumpled, paralyzed with shock, one hand still extended toward where the vial was. She is not moving to stop him. The shock has taken her legs out from under her. Get up, I think at her. Kimberly, get up and write down the license plate and call the police. But I cannot say it. And she doesn't. He carries me through the front door and down the porch steps, the familiar creak of the third step, the one Gerald always meant to fix, and the outside air hits me, thick, tropical, alive with the smell of the rain-wet garden and the more distant salt of the harbor. He bundles me into the back seat of the SUV, and the leather is hot against my skin, radiating the stored heat of a vehicle that's been sitting in the sun, and then the door slams and the engine starts and we are moving. I keep my eyes closed. I keep my breathing slow. I feel the medication beginning its work on my joints, and I wait. The pavement changes. The smooth, even roll of the historic district streets, brick and asphalt that I know the feel of the way I know the feel of my own house, gives way to a rhythmic thumping that means dirt road, means the packed earth lanes that cut through the low country outside the city. The sound changes too, less traffic, less ambient city noise, more the hiss of tall grass brushing the vehicle's undercarriage. The smell arrives next. Salt, yes, but not the clean salt of the open harbor. Something organic underneath it, something that belongs to standing water and anaerobic decay, the particular, layered smell of the Charleston marshes, the cordgrass and the pluff mud and the tidal creature life that does its work in the dark. We are not going to the hospital. I knew we were not going to the hospital when he turned right out of the driveway instead of left. The SUV slows, gravel popping under the tires, and then stops. The engine dies. The silence that replaces it is not the silence of the city, it is the live, complicated silence of the low country at dusk, cicadas, the distant complaint of wading birds, the soft percussion of something moving through tall grass. The humidity here is different from the house. It is a weight. An oppressive, total blanketing that makes the throat work harder to pull air. I hear him get out. The thud of the driver's door. The measured crunch of his footsteps on the muddy ground, moving toward the rear of the vehicle. I take a breath. The painkiller is at its peak. My knees, my traitorous, arthritic, grinding knees, are quiet. Not healed. Not strong. Quiet. The fire that has been my constant companion has retreated behind a pharmaceutical curtain, and what remains is a body I can operate. Stiffly. Slowly. With the particular courage of a woman who knows exactly how much time she has before the curtain rises again and the fire comes back. I hear him at the rear hatch, the latch mechanism engaging, the sound of him reaching for something. I do not wait to find out what. I reach across the back seat with my right hand. The fingers don't curl the way they should, they never do. But the door handle is a lever, not a grip, and I can manage a lever. I catch it, depress it, and lean my shoulder weight into the door. It swings open. The tall cordgrass receives me. I roll out of the SUV and into the marsh, and the mud is cool and wet and immediately soaks through my linen trousers, and the sharp edges of the grass rake across my hands and forearms. I do not make a sound. I gather what I have, 68 pounds of painkiller buffered, arthritic, determined woman, and I move. Not quickly. There is no quickly. But forward, through the grass, away from the light, away from the crunch of his footsteps that have just gone still behind me as he registers the open car door and the empty seat. I do not look back. The marsh swallows me. The darkness closes over the silver of my French twist, and I am gone before he even says my name. The marsh gives me up reluctantly. It takes 15 minutes of stumbling through cordgrass that reaches my shoulders, sinking into mud that grabs at my feet with every step, before I find the shoulder of the highway. The painkiller is receding now. I can feel it in the way the arthritis begins its slow, ominous reassertion, the fire rekindling in my knees like embers catching air. I have a window. I cannot afford to calculate how wide it is. Highway 17 at this hour is sparse, the occasional semi trailing its diesel roar northward, the distant yellow smear of a gas station sign a quarter-mile down. I must look extraordinary. 70 years old, silver hair half collapsed from its French twist, linen trousers soaked black with pluff mud to the knee, arms scratched raw from the cordgrass. A woman the marsh tried to keep. The taxi is yellow, old, and slowing before I fully extend my arm. The driver, young, with the particular wide-eyed expression of a man recalibrating everything he thought this shift would involve, rolls down the passenger window and stares at me with his mouth slightly open. I do not give him time to decide. I press a mud-stained $100 bill against the glass. The bill is from the emergency cash I keep folded inside the lining of my cardigan's interior pocket, behind the false seam Gerald's tailor built in 30 years ago at my request, because I have always believed in contingency funds and hidden seams. Stephen never thought to search my clothing. He never thought I was worth searching. Historic district, I say. My voice comes out lower than I expect, abraded by marsh air and effort, carrying a silt-roughened authority that surprises even me. Drive. He drives. I have him drop me on Laguerre Street, 2 blocks short of the estate. The security cameras on the neighboring properties, the Hendersons on the left run a full perimeter system, 3 cameras covering the street approach. The Beaumont estate on the right has had a camera on their gate post since their car was keyed in 2019, would record a mud-covered woman arriving at the Reed estate at this hour. That footage would be discoverable. I do not need discoverable. I need to be a ghost for approximately 90 more minutes. I navigate the back approach on foot, through the alley that runs behind the garden walls of the historic district properties, a narrow brick lane that smells of old mortar and cat and the recent rain. I know every loose brick, every uneven paving stone. I have walked this lane in the dark before, years ago, returning from late department events when Gerald was already asleep and I didn't want the front door to wake him. The servants' gate is exactly as I left it in my mental map, a wrought iron door set into the garden wall, secured with a simple sliding bolt that Stephen has been meaning to upgrade since they moved in 2 years ago. He's mentioned it 3 times. He has not done it. Stephen is a man of large plans and small follow-through on anything that doesn't generate a return. The bolt slides back. I push through into the kitchen garden, close the gate behind me, and stand for a moment in the dark between the rosemary hedge and the back steps, letting my breathing steady. The house is silent. The kitchen door is unlocked, Stephen left in a panic, a man carrying what he believed was a body and focused on the logistics of disposal. He did not stop to secure the house. I push the door open and step inside. The kitchen smells of stale tea and the ghost of his sandalwood cologne, that expensive petroleum and cedar scent that has begun to register in my nervous system as a warning signal. There is a half-empty mug on the counter. The overhead lights are off, only the small light above the stove is on, casting a low amber warmth over the tile. I stand in my own kitchen and I listen. The house breathes around me. The ceiling fan turns in the parlor. The grandfather clock marks the quarter hour. Somewhere above me, in the guest suite, I can hear the faint sound of Kimberly moving, footsteps, the creak of the old floorboards, the sound of someone pacing out a grief they don't know the edges of yet. My joints are returning to themselves with accelerating urgency. The pharmacological curtain is thinning. I can feel the inflammation building back toward its working temperature in both knees, in my right wrist, in the familiar furnace of my knuckles. I have perhaps 40 minutes before the pain reasserts full authority. I move through the shadows of my own hallway. The sunroom receives me without ceremony. I do not turn on the lights. The moon through the east-facing windows is sufficient, a three-quarter moon on a clearing sky, the storm front pushing through and leaving the kind of crystalline darkness that makes everything high contrast and precise. I can see well enough. I have always been able to work in low light. 40 years of late-night laboratory sessions will calibrate your eyes. I open the craft kit. My hands are shaking, not from fear, not from medication, but from the returning inflammation and the simple, biological aftermath of what my body has been through in the past several hours. I acknowledge the tremor and work around it, the way I have always worked around the RA, slowly, with patience, with the precise economy of motion that wastes nothing. I find the vial I need in the hidden compartment behind the false bottom. It is labeled, in my handwriting, Titanium Yellow 3, a designation that means nothing to anyone who isn't me. What it contains is a fluorescein derivative I spent 3 weeks modifying in the sunroom, working in the small hours while Stephen slept and Kimberly believed I was napping. A standard fluorescein solution glows green under UV. Mine glows blue, and it has been chemically tuned to a specific additional property. It binds with particular affinity to heavy metal traces, arsenic, specifically, on skin surfaces. Arsenic residue that accumulates on the hands of a man who has been handling arsenic compounds and has not fully eliminated them through routine handwashing. Because arsenic clings. This is one of the things my graduate students learned in the first semester. I unscrew the jar of lavender hand cream. The floral assault of it rises in the dark room, but I have prepared for this. I breathe through my mouth and work by feel and the dim moonlight. With a glass stirring rod no thicker than a knitting needle, I fold the fluorescein derivative into the cream. The quantity is precise, enough to produce a visible reaction under UV light without altering the cream's texture or scent at a detectable level. The lavender concentration is high enough to mask any chemical addition. He designed the masking agent himself, and now it is working for me. I stir until the distribution is uniform. I seal the jar. I place the jar back on the mahogany side table. Exactly where he left it. The same angle. I have a good visual memory for the placement of objects. It is a necessary skill in a laboratory where contamination can follow from a container being returned to the wrong position, and I set it with the same slight rightward tilt it had before, label facing the room. The bait is set. I move to the dining room. The chandelier above the dining table is Gerald's installation. He put it in during a photography phase in the early 90s, when he was developing his own film and needed specific light sources for color work. He installed UV-capable bulbs alongside the standard warm white ones, switchable independently from a secondary panel beside the main switch. The secondary panel is a small toggle I had an electrician properly integrate into the wall plate 5 years ago, when I began using the dining room for mineral fluorescence work. Stephen does not know about the secondary switch. I reach up to the fixture with hands that are vibrating with pain and effort, and I verify that the UV bulbs are seated correctly, that the secondary circuit is complete. My right arm screams at the elevation. I bring it down and grip the back of a dining chair until the worst of it passes. Then I cross to the heavy velvet drapes on the far wall, deep burgundy, floor length, original to the house, the kind of curtains that make a room feel like a sentence is being finished in them, and I find the footstool tucked into the corner. An old piece, low and tufted, the kind of furniture you don't notice because it has always been in the corner. I lower myself onto it with the careful deliberateness of a woman managing a body that has been through a great deal this evening, and I settle into the gap between the drapes and the wall. The fabric closes around me. The room is dim, warm, silent. I fold my hands in my lap and I wait. The reaction is prepared. All I need now is the catalyst. The front door hits the frame with a violence that sends a shudder through the floorboards I can feel through the footstool. He is not composed. The controlled, smooth, executive Stephen, the one who checks his gold watch and speaks in warm baritones and discards masks with professional efficiency, has been replaced by something rawer. I hear his breathing from the hallway, ragged, chest deep, the breathing of a man who has been moving fast and thinking faster and has arrived home to discover that the situation has not resolved the way it was supposed to. Through the gap in the drapes I watch him enter the dining room. He has discarded his suit jacket somewhere, lost it, perhaps, in the marsh or in the car, the bespoke navy worsted that cost more than a month of my graduate student stipends. His white shirt is damp and dirt-streaked, the French cuffs rolled to the elbow. He looks like what he is, a man who has spent the last hour doing something desperate and has not yet managed to put the performance back on. He stops when he sees Kimberly. She is at the dining table, exactly where I positioned her, in the amber pool of the single lamp, her honey blonde hair loose around her face, her hands folded on the table in front of her with the stillness of a woman who has exhausted every other configuration of grief. She is looking at the table's surface, not at him. The silence between them is the specific silence of two people in the same room who are telling entirely different stories. Stephen? Her voice comes out as a shard of broken glass, sharp, small, edged with something that he will read as devastation, and that is, in fact, controlled fury of a precision I did not fully know my daughter possessed. Where is she? Where is my mother? She does not look at him when she says it. This is the critical detail. If she looked at him, he would see it, the clarity in her eyes, the thing underneath the grief that is not grief at all. Kimberly has always broadcast her emotions openly. It is one of the ways Stephen has been able to manage her, because he can read her face the way he reads a balance sheet. But she is looking at the table, and her shoulders are doing the small shuddering motion of a woman who is breaking, and everything he sees is consistent with the story he needs to be true. The hospital called, she says, her voice dropping. They said you never arrived. A pause. She draws a breath, uneven, caught. Did you make sure she was comfortable, Stephen? She presses her fingers to her mouth. Her shoulders heave with a silent sob. Is she at peace? She is giving him the only thing Stephen Beaumont cannot resist, the absolute, total confirmation that he has won. The finish line appearing before him. The prize within reach. I watch his face from behind the drapes. The ragged breathing slows. His shoulders drop from where they've been riding high around his ears. The frantic, cornered energy drains out of his posture like water finding its level, and what replaces it is something I recognize from the wink he gave me over Kimberly's shoulder, the cold, quiet triumph of a man who believes the board has been cleared. He exhales. It is a long, slow, satisfied sound. He walks to the side table. His movements have gone loose and easy, the tight-coiled urgency of the last hour releasing all at once. He moves like a man in his own home, which he has always behaved as though this were, but which he has never been more certain of than in this moment. He believes I am in the marsh. He believes the evidence is buried, the witness is incapacitated by grief, and the legal apparatus he spent 11 months building will proceed without obstruction on Monday morning. He reaches for the jar of hand cream. She's gone, Kim, he says. His voice has recovered its smooth, performative warmth, not the full baritone yet, but the register that precedes it, the warm-up. It was her heart. She just slipped away in the car. It was very peaceful. He scoops out a liberal amount of cream and begins to work it into his palms. The lavender scent rises, filling the warm air of the dining room. She wasn't in any pain. His hands move in a slow, rhythmic circle. I watch from behind the drapes as he massages the fluorescein derivative into every surface of his palms, into the webbing between his fingers, into the creases of his knuckles where the arsenic traces have been accumulating, where the chemistry of what he's done still lives in his skin. He is literally washing himself in the evidence of his own guilt. He crosses to the sideboard and lifts Gerald's decanter of single malt. Gerald Scotch, a 25-year Glenfarclas that Gerald opened on their 35th anniversary and that has been sitting on that sideboard since Gerald's last morning, touched by no one, because I have not been able to move it. Stephen pours 3 fingers into a crystal glass with the ease of a man helping himself in a hotel bar. He looks at Kimberly's shaking shoulders with something that is not quite contempt and not quite sympathy, something in between, the expression of a man who finds emotional display mildly tiresome but is willing to tolerate it now that the larger issues are resolved. Honestly, Kimberly. He takes a sip. It's a blessing. You know that. He sets the glass down, rolls his neck, the joints cracking. She was a walking corpse. The arthritis, the age, the confusion. She wasn't living. She was just persisting. Another sip. I just gave the old bird a push toward the exit. He laughs. It is the laugh I have heard once before, the dry, rhythmic chuckle that lives behind his salesman voice, the one that comes out when he believes there is no audience for it. Unhurried. Genuinely amused. We have the portfolio now. We have the house. He gestures with the glass, expansive, proprietary. Stop crying and start thinking about the Mediterranean. The crystal catches the lamplight. My late husband's Scotch sits in the glass of the man who just told my daughter he pushed me toward my death, and the man is laughing. I breathe. I breathe once, slowly, through the curtain of velvet drapes, and I perform the reed reset, in for 4, held for 4, out for 4, and I step out from the shadows. I've always found the Mediterranean a bit too humid for my taste, Stephen. He drops the glass. He doesn't set it down. His hand simply releases it, a complete, involuntary motor failure, every muscle in his hand abandoning its function simultaneously, and the crystal hits the hardwood floor and detonates into a constellation of bright fragments, a sound like a small, precise explosion in the quiet room. The Scotch spreads in a dark stain. His face does something I have never seen a human face do in real time, it drains. Not of color, of everything. Of the performance, of the confidence, of the 6 years of carefully maintained architecture. He goes the gray-white of curdled milk, of old bone, of a document that has been left in the sun too long, and he stares at me across the dining room with the eyes of a man whose understanding of the world has just been revised at the cellular level. I am still wearing the mud-caked linen trousers. My hair has come entirely free of the French twist. I have a long scratch from the cordgrass running along my left forearm, dried to a thin brown line. I am 70 years old and I have been in a marsh tonight and I am standing in my own dining room, and I am, I think, the most frightening thing Stephen has ever seen. He opens his mouth. I do not let him use it. I reach to the wall panel, the secondary toggle, the one he doesn't know about, and I flip the switch. The warm amber light dies. What replaces it is the violet-blue pulse of the UV chandelier, flooding the dining room in the particular spectral frequency of high-wavelength ultraviolet, the same light Gerald used for his minerals, the same light I have used for my fluorescence work, the same light that will make certain compounds visible that are entirely invisible to the naked eye under normal illumination. The room becomes a different world. The white of Kimberly's blouse glows. The pale wood of the table takes on a bluish cast. The crystal fragments on the floor scatter violet light in small, cold sparks. And Stephen's hands, his palms, his fingers, the webbing between them, every surface he worked the cream into with those slow, rhythmic circles, ignite. A vivid, spectral, neon blue. Not a glow, exactly, a burning. The fluorescent derivative I folded into the cream has found the arsenic traces in his skin, has bound to the heavy metal residue that no amount of ordinary hand-washing removes, and under this specific wavelength it is announcing itself with the brightness of something that wants to be seen. His hands look like they belong to something that lives in deep water. Something bioluminescent and cold. Look at your hands, Stephen. My voice comes out flat and exact, the voice of a professor giving a student the data they cannot argue with. He looks. The sound he makes is not language. It is the strangled, animal sound of a man who has just seen the evidence of what he has printed on his own body in glowing blue light. He shoves his hands toward his trouser legs and rubs, hard, frantic, but the indicator spreads rather than diminishes, smearing across the dark fabric in ghostly streaks, branding his clothing as surely as his skin. He cannot rub off what is inside his pores. He cannot rub off what has been absorbing into his skin every time he handled the arsenic compounds he's been putting in my tea. He cannot rub off 11 months of poisoning a 70-year-old woman in her own home. The chemistry is absolute. The chemistry never lies. He looks at me, and for the first time in 6 years, he has nothing. No performance. No frame. No forged document or manufactured diagnosis or patronizing hand pat or rehearsed medical jargon. Just a man standing in blue light with his guilt glowing on his hands. The front door comes in. Not opens. Comes in, the impact force entry of officers who have been briefed and who do not wait for invitations. The doorframe flexes. The floorboards announce their arrival. Blue and red lights strobe through the tall parlor windows, clashing and cycling against the violet hum of the UV chandelier, turning the room into something that looks like evidence. 4 officers. 2 securing the doorway, 2 coming directly into the dining room with the focused, controlled movement of people who have been told what they're walking into and believe it. I had tripped the silent alarm the moment I stepped through the kitchen door. A feature I had installed 3 years ago, unannounced, at my own expense, routed to the Charleston PD's non-emergency monitoring line with a 10-minute response protocol. Stephen did not know about it. It is, like the secondary switch and the false bottom in the craft kit and the ledger under the mattress and the hidden seam in my cardigan, a thing I arranged quietly, for myself, against the possibility of needing it. I have spent my life installing contingencies. The officers take in the room, the UV light, the glowing hands, the black veil still on the coffee table from the earlier demonstration, the mud-covered woman standing with her spine straight against the doorway to the hall, the man pressed against the sideboard whose palms look like something from a crime scene, which, it turns out, they are. They do not need a long deliberation. Stephen lunges, not toward me, toward the door, the reflex of a man whose calculations are still running even as the mathematics have turned entirely against him, and 2 officers have him before he completes the motion. The tackle is professional and efficient, and Stephen goes down onto the dining room floor among the crystal fragments of Gerald's Scotch glass, and his blue hands are pulled behind his back, and the handcuffs close with 2 small, metallic clicks that are the most precise sounds I have heard all evening. He makes a sound then, high and thin, not quite a word, not quite anything recognizable. The sound of a structure that has been load-bearing for a long time and has just failed. A detective is speaking to me. I answer his questions. My voice is level. I gesture to the vial, to the cream jar, to the location of the nanny cam behind the chemistry journals. I mention the forged medical report on the sideboard and the ledger under the mattress in the primary bedroom. I mention 11 months of documented dosage tracking in my own handwriting. I am 70 years old, I have been in a marsh tonight, and I am the most credible witness in this room. The rain comes. It arrives the way Charleston rain arrives in summer, not gradually, not as a polite warning, but as a full commitment, a heavy, cleansing southern downpour that hits the garden and the street and the old tile roof of the Reed estate all at once, as though it has been waiting for exactly this moment to make its entrance. Kimberly finds my hand in the doorway to the veranda. Her fingers close around mine, around my gnarled, twisted, arthritic fingers, with the same gentleness she has always brought to holding them, the gentleness that was never about the shape of my hands and always about what was inside them. We sit on the veranda. The wicker chairs, Gerald's chairs, set at the angle we always set them, facing the garden rather than the street, because we were never people who watched the traffic. The rain comes down hard and clean on the jasmine, on the rosemary hedge, on the old brick garden path, and the smell that rises from it is the smell of the historic district after summer rain, wet pavement and salt air and the green, living smell of things that have been washed. Down the street, the cruiser's lights cycle once more and then go steady. Through the tall windows of the dining room, I can see the movement of officers, the flash of a camera documenting the scene, the UV light, the branded hands, the vial. The estate is quiet. My joints are fully returned to themselves now, the painkiller entirely metabolized, the inflammation running at its ordinary high season pitch. My knees are having a frank and unhelpful conversation with me about the evening's activities. My hands feel as though they've been held in a fire. I press them flat against my linen-covered thighs and let the pain be what it is, a signal from a body that has performed beyond its specifications and is now filing its report. I reach beside my chair and pick up the portfolio file. It is the original, the real one, assembled over 40 years of careful investment and Gerald's meticulous record-keeping and my own obsessive documentation of every account, every allocation, every decision. I have kept a copy in the sunroom's false compartment for 6 weeks, since I first understood the scope of what Stephen intended. The copy in his briefcase, the one he's been citing to attorneys and drafting conservatorship documents around, contains 3 account numbers I altered by a single digit each. I hand Kimberly the real file. She takes it with both hands, the way you take something you understand the weight of. Mom. Her voice is still raw, still carrying the evening in it. She looks at the file and then at me, and her eyes are doing several things at once, grief and relief and love and the particular, complicated expression of a woman who has discovered that the person she was mourning was fighting for her at the same time. How long have you known? Long enough, I say. The rain intensifies, drumming hard on the veranda overhang, running in bright streams off the eaves into the garden below. The jasmine smell is overwhelming and clean. My joints ache with a ferocity that will require 2 days of careful management and probably a call to my rheumatologist on Monday. My hair is still half loose from the French twist, and there is dried marsh mud on my left shoe that I notice only now. I am 70 years old and I have had an extraordinary Thursday. I look at my daughter's hands around the portfolio file, her slender, unarthritic, still young hands, and I think about the 40 years of decisions compressed inside that folder, all the things Gerald and I said no to so that we could say yes to the things that mattered. The department head position. Kimberly's education. This house. I put my hand over hers. The gnarled, frozen claw of it, resting on top of her smooth fingers. Control the reaction, Kimberly, I say. She looks at me. Always control the reaction. The rain comes down, and the garden fills with sound, and somewhere in a Charleston PD cruiser Stephen is being driven toward a cell that smells nothing like sandalwood, and in this house, my house, Gerald's house, Kimberly's inheritance, the heat has finally, genuinely, broken. I sit in the wicker chair on the veranda with my aching hands in my lap, and I breathe the jasmine and rain air of a city I have lived in for 70 years, and I think, the formula held. It always does, if you work it correctly. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?